Welcome back, everyone. We're diving into the life of William Walker this week, a man who, well, he tried to create his own empire.
Tried being the operative word there.
Definitely tried, out of the Wild West and even beyond, really.
Hmm.
But this time we're focusing on his first attempt at empire building, I guess you could call it, the Republic of Sonora.
Ah, yes.
Yeah.
Republic of Sonora. Short-lived, but so fascinating. It's a story of, audacious plans, legal loopholes, and
A whole lot of historical irony, wouldn't you say?
a healthy dose for sure. You see, this was the era of filibusters.
Filibusters. Now, those are interesting characters.
They were essentially private citizens launching military expeditions to conquer territory.
Yeah.
They were a mix of adventurers, mercenaries, operating in a very gray area of international law.
So kind of like legal pirates.
In a sense, yes. And William Walker, he was a standout, even among these colorful characters.
I've heard he wasn't exactly what you'd picture as a conqueror.
Right. Small in stature,
Yeah.
quiet, but with this burning ambition. You just couldn't miss it.
I read that he was a doctor. And a lawyer. Oh, and a journalist at some point,
He
too.
was even a duelist, though not a very successful one.
A duelist. Wow, what a resume. But, I mean, that early life, it doesn't exactly scream future conqueror, does it?
It really doesn't. He came from privilege, family full of military men, politicians,
Yeah.
newspaper men. It's like a recipe for that American exceptionalism that was so big back then.
So you're saying this guy had it all, but decided to go conquer foreign lands. What happened there?
Well, after his travels in Europe, solidified, you could say, his belief in America's destiny. He ended up in San Francisco, 1850.
Ah, San Francisco in 1850. That was the Wild West at its wildest.
Exactly. Lawless, full of opportunity, perfect for a man with big dreams, right?
Yeah.
And he learns about these French adventurers who are trying to establish colonies in Mexico.
Oh, interesting. Did they succeed?
No, they failed. But their failures, those actually inspired Walker.
So he saw their mistakes and thought, hold on, I can do better.
Exactly. He believed he could be bolder, more strategic. And in 1853, he sets his sights on Sonora in Mexico. This first attempt, it was more of a legal settlement
Of a
proposal.
power move, you could say.
Exactly. But Mexico, they weren't buying it.
Makes sense. But what was Walker like during this time? Was he already this commanding figure?
The accounts from back then actually describe him as unimposing and poorly dressed.
That's not what I expected. Makes you wonder how he pulled off what came next.
It really does.
Didn't he also have a bit of a reputation back in San Francisco? Something about a duel?
Ah, yes. He was known for, attacking people in his newspaper. This time it was a judge, and so they had a duel.
Oh, wow. And how did that go for him?
Let's just say Walker ended up getting shot in the leg.
Ouch. You'd think that would slow him down a bit.
You'd think so, but it actually seemed to boost his reputation. It was a strange time.
So, not deterred by the whole getting shot thing, Walker sets his sights on a bigger prize.
That's right. Baja California.
Baja California. Why there?
His plan was to establish the Republic of Sonora. Independent from Mexico, of course. But the ultimate goal. He wanted it annexed by the U.S., just like Texas.
Ambitious, to say the least. But you'd need an army for that. Where did he find the men?
He appealed to the dreams of down-on-their-luck miners, promised them land, riches, the whole 9 yards.
Classic tactic. But I bet this whole invasion wasn't cheap. How'd he finance it?
He had a scheme for that too, of course, called it the Independence Loan Fund, basically selling bonds in exchange for land in this, not yet existent republic.
That's clever and a little bit shady.
Very much so.
But wasn't the U.S. government trying to stop filibusters like Walker? I mean, wasn't there the Neutrality Act?
There was. But Walker, ever the strategist, he found a loophole. He called his mission a mining expedition.
Oh, I see. So he bypassed the whole thing by basically lying about his intentions. Clever. But did it work?
It did. He set sail on the Caroline with men who, some of them genuinely thought they were going mining.
They had no idea they were actually part of an invasion force. Wow, that's something.
It is. And then, Walker changes his target. Instead of Guimas, he decides to go for La Paz.
Why the change of plans?
Strategy, mainly. La Paz was more isolated, easier to take with a small force. And so, on November 3rd, 1853, they arrive in La Paz.
What happened? Was there a big battle? A siege?
Nope. Walker pretty much walked into the governor's office and took over. Just like that.
He just walked in, no fight, no resistance.
Apparently not.
Hmm.
And then, He declares himself president of this new Republic of Lower California, raises his own flag.
He just declared himself president. That's, bold. What did this flag even look like?
2 red bars, 2 red stars.
Yeah.
And here's where it gets even weirder. He imposes the legal code of Louisiana.
Louisiana. Wait, what? Why Louisiana?
It seems random, but it's likely a move to attract support from pro-slavery Southerners back in the U.S.
So playing politics even while trying to establish his own nation.
Always. And it raises questions about Walker's own views on slavery. Was he truly pro-slavery or just using it as a tool for power?
It's a good question, a question we'll have to keep exploring as we delve further into the rather chaotic reign of President Walker. So President Walker, living the dream, right? I mean, he had his republic, his flag, even his own legal code.
You'd think so, but ruling a conquered territory, it's not as glamorous as it sounds.
I bet it wasn't. What happened? Did the locals welcome him with open arms?
Not exactly. Walker's reign, it quickly descended into chaos. His men, they were more interested in, well, stealing cattle than in actually establishing a government.
So not exactly the picture of stability and order. What was the local reaction to all this?
Well, there was resistance, of course. They weren't just going to sit back and watch their land be taken over.
Makes sense. Did they fight back?
They did. There was a skirmish. Walker's forces won, but he blew it way out of proportion in his reports, called it the Battle of La Paz, made it sound like a grand victory.
Ah, the power of propaganda. Always a useful tool for a aspiring emperor.
It is. But behind the facade, Walker was, well, in over his head. He kept moving his capital. First La Paz, then Cabo San Lucas, then Ensenada.
Always on the run. But why? Was it just the local resistance, or was there something else going on?
It was more than that. His men were deserting, supplies were low, and the U.S. government, they were blocking any reinforcements.
So his grand vision was starting to unravel.
Exactly.
Was there a specific event that really marked the beginning of the end for him in Baja California?
There was. Walker decided to march into Sonora, left his base in Ensenada vulnerable, and it backfired big time.
Oh, that doesn't sound good. What happened?
He was ambushed. His men were picked off by Mexican militia, led by a guy named Antonio Melendres.
Antonio Melendres. So Walker finally met his match?
You could say that. Melendres was a skilled military leader and determined to drive Walker out.
I bet he was. So what happened next? Did Walker manage to regroup?
Things just got worse, really. It all culminated in the siege of Ensenada.
A siege? That sounds serious.
It was. But here's the interesting part. Reinforcements actually arrived from San Francisco. So Walker and his men, they managed to escape.
A lucky break.
In a way, yes. But the fact that he needed rescuing at all, well, it showed his poor leadership and his strategic blunders.
A Pyrrhic victory, if you will.
Exactly. The siege marked the end of Walker's republic, just a few months after he declared himself president.
Wow, what a fall from grace. He must have been crushed.
He was. By May 1854, Walker was surrendering at the U.S. border. Down to one boot, his army shattered.
What a contrast to the grand ambitions he had just a few months earlier.
It is. But he wasn't out of the woods yet. Back in the U.S., he was put on trial. For violating the Neutrality Act, of course.
Ah, yes, the Neutrality Act. The loophole he so cleverly exploited.
The one and only. And this trial, it became a national sensation.
I can imagine. People probably had strong opinions about Walker and his actions.
They did. Some saw him as a reckless criminal. Others, a hero. The courtroom was packed. Supporters, opponents. Everyone wanted to see what would happen.
So what did happen? Was he found guilty?
The jury deliberated for 8 minutes.
8 minutes. That's it.
That's it. And then they declared him not guilty.
Not guilty. So he got away with it. Just like that.
Pretty much. The courtroom went wild. His supporters were ecstatic.
Talk about a turnaround. From defeated filibuster to folk hero, all thanks to a quick jury deliberation. What an ending.
Not quite an ending. It actually fueled his ambitions even more. Remember that nickname he earned? The Gray-Eyed Man of Destiny.
Ah, yes. That nickname, it perfectly captures, well, the whole Walker persona, doesn't it?
It does. And he started looking for new opportunities, new lands to conquer.
I have a bad feeling about this.
You should. This time, his attention turned to Nicaragua.
Nicaragua. That's a bit of a jump, isn't it? From Sonora to Nicaragua.
It is. But Nicaragua in the 1850s, well, they were having their own problems. A bloody civil war between two rival factions, the Legitimists and the Democrats.
Ah, so a nation divided. Ripe for the picking, as they say.
Exactly. And Walker saw an opportunity. He wasn't just interested in land anymore. He wanted power. He wanted to shape nations according to his vision.
And Nicaragua, with its civil war and its strategic location, well, it was the perfect target.
It was, especially when you consider the potential for a canal.
A canal, what do you mean?
Nicaragua, it was a key piece of the puzzle for global trade. Control of Nicaragua meant potential control of a future canal route across Central America, connecting the Atlantic and the Pacific.
So this wasn't just about expanding American territory. This was about controlling a vital artery of global commerce.
Exactly. And Walker, he saw himself at the center of it all.
From a failed filibuster to a potential kingmaker, what a story. But how did he manage to get involved in the Nicaraguan Civil War? I mean, he was just one man.
Well, he was a master at leveraging opportunities and exploiting chaos. He presented himself as the solution to the Democrats' problems.
So he was going to help them win the war.
That was the plan, in exchange, of course, for their support. And in June 1855, he arrived in Nicaragua with a small band of followers.
Ready to play his hand in this new game of power. This is getting good. I can't wait to see what happens next. Last we left off, Walker had just arrived in Nicaragua, ready to jump into a civil war and maybe even control a canal route. It all sounds pretty ambitious.
It was very ambitious. And for a while, it seemed like he might actually pull it off.
Really? He was actually successful.
Well, he gained a foothold and quickly rose through the ranks, I guess you could say, of the Democratic faction. He was a capable military leader, ruthless but capable.
So he's winning battles, gaining influence, everything's coming up, Walker. But I have a feeling this success didn't come cheap. What was the price of Walker's rise to power?
You're right to be suspicious. Walker's methods were often brutal. And his vision for Nicaragua, well, wasn't exactly democratic, let's say.
So not exactly a benevolent dictator.
Not quite. He made English the official language, alienated many with his pro-slavery views, and even tried to get Nicaragua annexed by the U.S.
Wow, talk about a power grab. It seems like he was trying to create a mini America down in Central America.
Exactly, with himself in charge, of course. But as you might imagine, this heavy-handed approach didn't go over so well.
Did it backfire? I mean, didn't he face resistance from the Nicaraguans?
Of course he did. People saw him as a foreign invader, not a liberator.
Yeah.
Just another outsider trying to control Nicaragua for his own benefit.
So he's losing support within Nicaragua. But what about the U.S.? Were they backing him up?
Walker had his supporters back in the U.S., especially those who are all about expansionism and Southern interests. But officially, the U.S. government tried to stay neutral.
So no cavalry riding in to save Walker. But he had made some enemies along the way, right? What about Cornelius Vanderbilt, the railroad tycoon?
You're remembering right. Vanderbilt had a lot invested in Nicaragua, especially in a transit route that was vital to his business. And Walker, well, he was a direct threat to all that.
Sounds like a classic clash of titans. Walker, the self-proclaimed man of destiny, versus Vanderbilt, the capitalist king who won that showdown.
Let's just say that Vanderbilt had resources that Walker couldn't even dream of. And he used those resources to back Walker's enemies.
Yeah.
Cut off his supplies, his support. It was a brilliant move.
So Walker's dream was starting to fall apart. He'd lost the Nicaraguans, the U.S. wasn't coming to his rescue, and now he had Vanderbilt against him. How does it all end?
By 1857, Walker was out of options. His forces were depleted, his enemies were closing in, he had to surrender.
Surrender? To whom?
He surrendered to a U.S. Navy Commodore, a guy named Charles Henry Davis, on May 1st, 1857. A humiliating end to his reign in Nicaragua.
Ah, the irony. Surrendering to the very country he'd been trying to impress. What happened to Walker after that? Did he just disappear?
Not at all. He went back to the U.S., of course, where he got a mixed reaction. Some saw him as a villain, others as a hero.
So still a controversial figure.
Definitely. And he played it up, went on a speaking tour, defended his actions, promoted his vision. He never gave up on that vision.
This guy just never quits. But that wasn't the end of his story, was it? Didn't he try one more time to make his dream a reality?
You're right. The lure of conquest was too strong for Walker to resist. In 1860, he launched another expedition, this time to Honduras.
Honduras, after everything he'd been through, after Sonora, after Nicaragua, after prison, he still thought he could conquer Central America.
Ambition can be a powerful drug, and Walker was hooked.
So what happened in Honduras? Did he finally succeed?
He did not. His Honduran adventure was short and disastrous. He faced strong resistance from the Honduran authorities. And the British were involved too. They weren't about to let another American take over.
So no happy ending for Walker.
Sadly, no. He was captured by the British, handed over to the Honduran authorities, court-martialed, sentenced to death. On September 12, 1860, William Walker was executed by firing squad in Trujillo, Honduras.
What a dramatic ending to a life full of ambition and ultimately failure. His story really makes you think, doesn't it?
It does. It's a glimpse into a time when manifest destiny was at its peak, when the idea of American expansion was incredibly powerful. And Walker, he was both a product of that time and a cautionary tale, maybe.
A reminder that even the grandest dreams can have consequences and that the pursuit of power can be a dangerous game.
Exactly. So, what's your take on William Walker? Villain, visionary, just a man caught up in the currents of history.
I think he was a little bit of all of those things, but one thing's for sure, his story is a fascinating one, a reminder of the complexities of history and the power of ambition. And we hope you enjoyed this deep dive into the life and times of William Walker. We'll see you next time for another journey into the past.